The Swedish city Göteborg, which has an English name of Gothenburg that may be easy to pronounce, is the country's second largest city after the capital Stockholm. It's a classic case of national rivalry about which is the most beautiful city and has the most personality. As with all provinces and larger cities in Sweden, the accent is very different, and you can immediately tell if someone is from Stockholm or Göteborg, or for that matter, even from cities in northern or southern Sweden. I feel like this is a good place to start with the Denise from E.C.Andersson. It's certainly an unusually shaped watch that looks like nothing else I've ever seen in person. And this is no accident. I'm pretty sure that the team is happy to stick their chin out and try something new and fun. We have a watch here that stems from a beautiful harbour city on the west coast of Sweden, which is home to over 20,000 sailboats with at least as many sailors that may or may not go on raiding trips to Northumbria. So it's probably not surprising that the watch looks a little, to me anyway, like a classic marine compass. Designing an unusually shaped watch is of course a good way to get attention, but ultimately they have to sell and be worn by us, the watch people. So is it worthy of your consideration? Let's find out. My channel is a labour of love for me, and I would really appreciate a like and subscribe if you like what I do. Leave me a comment too if you like. My interest in this watch was piqued from researching brands from my motherland, which is Sweden if you hadn't guessed. I've spent ages on this site and almost hit the purchase button a few times, but to be perfectly honest, I had doubts about the case size and fit on my wrist. Luckily, a friend bought one secondhand recently and lent it to me for this review. The Denise has a set of unusual dimensions in person, but not on paper. The diameter is 40mm, but the dial is much smaller at roughly 27mm. The lug to lug is 46mm, which is quite compact, but it does not bend to your wrist hardly at all, which means that the 14mm thickness is noticeable. On my 19cm left wrist, it looks pretty good overall. You might say immediately here that this watch is not for me. And it's interesting to see the direction that the brand has taken with their newer watches that are much more streamlined and less edgy, while still retaining their unique personality. But that said, the Denise sold out of all versions, and even second-hand they pop up rarely. As usual, if you build a fun and unusual watch, there's an audience for these and they will sniff you out. So let's check out this dial first. What is perhaps the first thing you notice is that large power reserve just above the 6th position, half of which is marked orange. The orange part is the upper range of the power reserve, unusual perhaps since orange is typically a colour used for warning. But it is a nice click of colour on the dial that complements the blue nicely and is also replicated on the orange tip of the seconds hand. The tiny hand that moves with the power reserve is unobtrusive, which I think is a good choice on a small and busy dial. Speaking of blue dial, it's a lovely dark marine blue with a gradient that goes darker towards the edge of the dial. It lifts the white applied indices that are rather large and I feel perhaps dwarf the hands a little bit. That said, unlike many other brands with a double bars at 12, which tends to be a bit of a nemesis to both small and large brands, they are absolutely perfectly aligned, which is lucky since it's one of those details you just can't unsee otherwise. Moving on to the hands, they are quite unusual once again. E.C.Andersson calls them their signature Bohuslän hands, named after the rocky islands on the west coast that are a must visit in the region. We have the attractive Syrinx seconds hand, mixed with a short arrow tipped hour hand and a minute hand that I'm not sure what to liken to. It's extremely long and almost looks like it touches the edge of the dial. I've seen this before in outright dive watches where the minute hand is important, but it's really just long and just kind of blends in with the indices here. What do you think about this unusual arrangement? Let me know in the comments. Printed on the dial is the ECA company name, the city it hails from in Swedish, which I really like, 200 meters above the power reserve, and automatisk, which in Swedish means meatballs. Okay, I tell a lie. Believe it or not, but it means automatic. This is all in an attractive typeface, and it all works for me anyway. Perhaps I'd dumped it 200 meters if it was me, since it's pretty small and could have just gone on the back. Surrounding all this is the ceramic insert classic unidirectional dive bezel, which is all straightforward except the prominent N for north at the 30 position. As I discussed in my Seiko Alpina review, it's quite easy to use your watch as a compass, and having a prominent north indicator would definitely help you if you intend to do this. Now that's if you can move this bezel with the sloped edges with knurling that's not helping much in gripping it. It is a very firm action, and that's despite this watch having gone through 2 owners. But I'm guessing they probably haven't played with it much, and it would loosen up over time. This is good, since otherwise you'd have to travel with a wrench. So the case itself is very unusual. They have taken this shape even further than the robust Helsen shark diver with its prominent shoulders and square shape. From above it looks great to me and really frames that dial. And keeping the sign crown smallish with minimal crown guards was a good move. Wearing it though, now that's another matter. I've worn plenty of watches thicker than this 14mm, but there is absolutely zero compliance to your wrist. This watch has no interest in bending its knee to you. You shall serve it, whether you want to or not. It's all fine from above, but from the side it is a big chunk that sits on top of your wrist. Lucky then that the lovely rubber strap falls off immediately, which definitely helps. Now I am being a bit harsh here perhaps, since it wears better than I expected, but the thickness is a problem with this design. Flipping the watch over, we're met with a very attractive motif with ships and a beautiful stylized whale with what I assume is a parrot's beak. It's a piece of modern art that I like very much. Again, all the print is in Swedish, which I think more brands should do. Use their own local languages. It just looks and feels more exotic. The model name is followed by professional diver in Swedish, which might be a stretch, but it looks good. Behind the case we find a Seiko NE57, which has been regulated and inspected in Sweden, so should keep good time. I've not noticed any big discrepancies in my time, but the Seiko movement does explain the thickness perhaps. You can expect over 50 hours power reserve from this one. The rubber strap is attractive and comfortable, as is the embossed clasp, which is clearly custom made for this watch. This is no off-the-shelf buckle-on clasp. It has a party trick too, with a super simple on-the-fly adjustment, which is a design that's both attractive and is constructed to last. It is excellent. Should you want to use something else, the lug width is 20mm, so you'll have plenty of options. Finally, the lume. It's a bluish green, clear and attractive, much like its motherland in the beautiful north of Europe. So what do you think about this watch? I love unusual watch design, especially when it's as attractive as this one. Does it wear perfectly? No. Does it look great? I think the answer is yes to that one. Somehow, the hands array and dial works for me despite being quite busy, and those muscular Viking shoulders do look beautiful to my eyes. If it was just 2mm thinner, I would have bought this on the spot, since I think it's a great little piece from Sweden. Would I have felt the same if this hailed from somewhere else I had no connection to? I'm honestly not sure on that one. But I know that my friend that owns a lot of very fancy watches, from Rolex to Blancpain, have been pining for this for a long time, so I don't think I'm alone. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next time.